When you think about big global companies, their logos feel almost permanent, right? These symbols you just expect to stay the same.
Absolutely. They're meant to be anchors. So when a company does change its main visual identity, it's usually a pretty big deal, very noticeable.
Usually, yeah. But that's what makes this deep dive kind of interesting, because we're looking at something different.
Exactly. We're tackling one of those really rare cases,
Yeah.
a full redesign of a major logo where making a big splash clearly wasn't the goal.
Right. We're diving into the recent redesign of the Suzuki logo.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you put the old one and the new one next to each other, you might actually struggle to spot the difference at first glance.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission today is really to unpack what that kind of strategic subtlety looks like in branding.
Mm-hmm.
What does it tell us about how much companies value that instant recognition?
Yeah, we've been looking through the source material, trying to figure out, okay, why would a company spend, serious time, effort, money replacing something entirely,
Hmm.
only for it to look, to most people anyway, almost exactly the same. It's all about, I think, precision branding.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We probably need to start with the timeline, because that feels really important here.
Yeah, context is key.
Suzuki only just rolled this out, which means the previous logo, the familiar S mark, it was used continuously for 22 years.
22 years. I mean, just think about that. In the world of design and branding, that's practically an eternity.
It really is.
That single design represented the company through, well, huge shifts in technology, in markets, everything. It built up this enormous amount of brand equity, like a really deep connection with people all over the world.
Okay, so if you've got 2 decades of that kind of stability, why even touch it? Especially if the change is going to be so minimal. Wouldn't you expect something bolder if you wanted to modernize?
Well, that's the first big strategic point, isn't it? That decision to change, but to change so carefully. The sources are clear. The basic structure, the blueprint of the logo, it stayed exactly the same. They didn't mess with the shape, the proportions, the core geometry of that S.
So the silhouette, the thing you instantly recognize, that was preserved.
Exactly. And that sends a really specific message, right? It tells everyone, look, we're evolving, yes, but we are not fundamentally changing who we are. They clearly weren't willing to risk confusing anyone who'd instantly known that mark for, well, 22 years.
Okay, that makes sense. Prioritizing that history, that stability,
Yeah.
over just making noise. But if the structure is identical,
Yeah.
then what actually changed?
Yeah.
There has to be something.
Right.
And this is where I think it gets really interesting, the technical bit.
Yes. This is where we shift from the overall structure, what the sources call the exactly same foundation, to how it's actually rendered, how it looks.
Okay.
And the source material points to one really specific, quantifiable difference.
Which is what we're calling the great flattening,
Right.
right? The old logo was described as being more like 3D,
Mm-hmm. It had some dimension.
while the new one is definitely flat 2D,
Mm-hmm.
completely flat. It's like they just removed the depth.
Yeah, and technically that's a huge shift. When we say more like 3D, we're talking about design elements from, well, an older era.
Like gradients, shadows.
Exactly. Shading, gradients, maybe little bevels or highlights that tried to make the logo look like a physical object, like a metal badge on a car.
Right, which maybe made sense when you mostly saw logos on actual products or printed stuff.
Precisely. But those kinds of 3D effects, they become a real problem in today's digital world. They add visual clutter, they can look messy at small sizes, and crucially, they just don't scale well.
Ah, okay.
Think about shrinking that kind of 3D logo down for, say, a tiny app icon on your phone, or even a website favicon.
Yeah, all those subtle shadows and gradients would just turn into mush.
Exactly. Pixelated, muddy, it loses clarity. And that's what the flat 2D approach fixes. It strips all that away.
Just pure shape and color.
Correct. Pure, clean, usually vector-based geometry. And that instantly makes the logo feel more modern. But more importantly, it makes it incredibly adaptable.
Adaptable how?
Well, it works cleanly everywhere. On a website, in an app, dark mode, light mode. It stays sharp and clear whether it's blown up massive on a billboard or tiny on a screen. By removing that illusion of depth, Suzuki basically committed to clarity, to speed, to working perfectly across all platforms. It's aligning the visual strategy with, modern digital needs, user interface design principles.
Huh. It's funny how just taking something away, removing those effects can signal something so strategic. Like simplification is actually sophistication here.
That's a good way to put it.
But let's talk about the money side, because this seems to be the real sticking point in the source material.
Ah, yes. The tension. Huge cost. Tiny visible change.
Exactly. We've established the structure's the same. The only real change is this technical rendering style.
Mm.
But implementing that change across everything globally,
Yeah.
that's a massive undertaking.
Oh, massive.
Signage, products, websites, internal documents. The cost, like you said, must be astronomical. And the source material rightly asks that question. I wonder how much they have paid for this logo design. What's the ROI on a change most customers won't even consciously notice?
And that is the key question, isn't it? If you, listening right now, probably wouldn't notice the difference unless it was pointed out, why on earth spend the money?
Yeah.
And the answer, I think, based on this strategy, is that they weren't paying for visibility. They were paying for future-proofing,
Yeah.
for longevity, and maybe even risk mitigation.
Okay, explain that. Risk mitigation how?
Mm.
Wasn't there a risk in not changing enough? Like looking timid or like they missed a chance to do a proper refresh?
Oh, for sure. That risk is definitely there. A big, bold redesign gets headlines. It signals major change, maybe a new direction for the company.
Mm-hmm.
But Suzuki clearly did the calculation. And they decided that the value of that instant global recognition, all that equity built up over 22 years, was way more important than the temporary buzz of a flashy new design.
So they valued consistency over hype.
It seems so. They didn't need to look radical. They needed their logo to work perfectly in the modern world, while still being unmistakably Suzuki. So the cost wasn't just for a designer tweaking a file.
Right.
It was for the whole strategic analysis. How do we update this vital asset for the next couple of decades without losing that connection, without causing any confusion? And then the immense logistical cost of the rollout.
Yeah, you mentioned that. It's not just websites, it's factory tooling.
Exactly. Think about the physical badges on cars, motorcycles, engines, the molds, the stamps. That's expensive stuff. Updating dealership signs globally, uniforms, stationery. It's a huge, complex operation.
So that investment, even though the visual shift is subtle, it ensures that a logo born, in the late 20th century?
Yeah, around then.
It ensures it's technically ready for the mid-21st century while keeping that trust and familiarity.
That seems to be the logic. The high value is tied to the precision. Preserve the identity, update the execution.
Okay, so it's a prime example of how sometimes the biggest strategic moves are hidden in the details, the technical stuff, that maybe seems boring on the surface.
Absolutely. They didn't need a visual revolution. They just needed a highly efficient, optimized asset for today and tomorrow. And shifting from 3D style graphics to flat just delivered that.
Yep.
Simple as that, but not simple at all in execution.
Wow. Okay, this has actually been a really fascinating deep dive. What looked like almost nothing turns out to be, pretty clever strategic thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So just to kind of wrap up what we found, after using the same core logo for 22 years, Suzuki undertook a global update.
Yep.
But they kept the actual structure, the shape exactly same
Yeah.
to preserve all that brand recognition.
Yep.
The entire change was focused on a technical shift, moving away from that older dimensional sort of 3D style with gradients and shadows, a clean, flat 2D aesthetic, something much more adaptable and ready for digital uses, essentially.
And the key takeaway for you listening is probably this. Whenever you see a big established company make a change that seems really, really small, maybe even trivial, look closer.
Don't just dismiss it.
Exactly. Because often, really significant, expensive, strategic decisions are hidden in those tiny technical details. In this case, just removing the appearance of depth from a letter S signals a major commitment to being fit for the future, especially the digital future.
It's a great reminder that sometimes the smartest design move is the one you barely notice.
It really is. Which kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on, doesn't it?
Go on.
Well, if the usual point of a big corporate logo redesign is to shout about change, to signal a new era, what does it really mean when a company like Suzuki decides the most important, most forward-thinking change they can make is one most people won't even